That's the most important process of the multifamily investing or multifamily operations and asset management process is the leasing process. So you really want to make sure you have a sense of how good they are at that. Welcome to the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Axel Ragnarsson, and on this show, I dissect how seasoned multifamily investors started, built, and scaled their businesses. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another quick solo episode here on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the 5 components of a property management company that I care about most when vetting potential management companies or interviewing a management company. And these aren't necessarily going to be questions that I'm asking, although you can reframe these into questions. But they're more or less kind of the inherent traits or really the key attributes of a management company that I most care about, and that I think are frankly the most important to evaluate when you're evaluating a potential management partner from a PM standpoint. So we're going to jump right in. We're just going to tear through these. This is a question that I get a lot, so I'm just going to cut right to the chase here and talk about exactly what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about hiring a management company or what I care the most about. So number one, I want to work with a management company, and I think it's extremely important for investors to think about this first before anything else when interviewing management companies or trying to find the right management partner, and that is experience managing similar assets to the one that they're buying. And to further define that, a management company that manages multifamily isn't necessarily one that might be the best suited to managing your multifamily property. Right? We obviously care about location in terms of where this management company is primarily managing assets. You want them to be in the same city, the same metro, the same submarket, et cetera, right? We understand that. Let's put that aside. But we also want to work with a management company that has experience managing your class of asset and the size of asset that you're looking to, bring them on to manage. If you have a 125 unit apartment building that needs on-site staff and you're bringing it to a management company that typically manages kind of small to mid-sized multifamily stuff that's 5 to 50 units, that's scattered site where there's no on-site staff, it's probably not going to be the best management partner, right? They're probably not going to have the best systems in place or the best processes in place to actually take over management of an asset like that. Not to say that they can't do it, but it's obviously a different process from a management standpoint. Another example, right? Let's say you have a 20-unit Class A building that's catering to the top 15% income earning residents in that specific submarket, and you're bringing it to a management company that primarily manages C-class assets, more workforce housing. When they're renovating units, they're kind of renovating to a lower standard. When they're leasing, it's a bit more of a, rougher process. And they're more in the game of like just trying to manage and keep their arms around C-class buildings. The management process for nicer buildings, for A-class, for B-plus class is a different process. It's a different level of service. It's also a bit of a different approach from a reno standpoint, from an advertising standpoint. You're trying to advertise different components of that unit. Those residents are less price conscious. They're more interested in location. They're more interested in the reno finish, the management company, maybe the amenities, right? They're a bit of a different ball game. So to summarize, you want to find a management company that manages the size of assets that you're buying. They want that manage the class of assets that you're buying, and then are managing in the very specific submarket in which you're buying as well. Number 2, I want to work with a management company that has specialized staff, and that only really comes with scale. So for example, you want to work with a management company that has very clearly defined roles for the people in their business. Leasing agents, maintenance coordinators, maintenance techs, assistant property managers, project managers if they're overseeing some construction. And then ideally they have staff supporting their internal business operations as well. You would rather work with a management company who has reached the size where individuals have siloed roles, because that means that those individuals are better suited to execute on their role, on those jobs. It's a lot easier to hire somebody who is exclusively going to be a leasing agent versus somebody who's going to be half a leasing agent, but half an assistant property manager, and they're going to need to interface with vendors and they're, answering property management questions and dealing with, tenants on an ongoing basis. Et cetera, right? Because if you're hiring someone to exclusively lease apartments, then you can hire someone who is very specifically trained and suited for that role and is going to be better suited to execute the duties of that role. You'd rather have somebody who's solely focused on project management, right? Whether that's working with external vendors to replace, key systems, right? In terms of CapEx, whatever. They're managing GCs in-house if they're managing the unit turn process. And they're just spending their whole day on the construction side versus a PM who, again, has all the PM duties of working out challenges with residents or, onboarding properties when they're taking over management, dealing with any kind of asset management calls, but also trying to figure out all of the stuff on the construction side. So again, that's typically going to be indicative of a larger management company, one that has 5, 6, 700 plus units, whatever the number is in your specific market, to require that level of siloed focus from a staff standpoint. But that is important. You want people who come into work, right, on the management side with the management company that you're working with, and they have an extraordinarily clearly defined role and have been hired to execute the very specifics of that role, and they're not crossing over between multiple different things, which can create confusion from a client standpoint. Third, I want to work with management companies that have in-house maintenance. And some investors don't like this because they think they're being upcharged too significantly when they're working with the maintenance department. Like, oh, you're charging me $75 an hour or $70 an hour, whatever. Yeah, listen, the management company's got to make a profit, right? So if they're paying their guys $30 an hour, they got to build their time out at 60 to break even on those employees. That's the math that is the reality when you're working with a management company. Some people don't like that and they'd rather work with a management company that exclusively contracts out to third party because they might think there's a conflict of interest, et cetera. I think that's extremely short-sighted. What we care about more on the maintenance side than the cost, and I should probably put an asterisk next to that. Obviously, this is assuming that we're getting stuff done at a reasonable cost. Whether it's $50 an hour, $60 an hour, whatever, that's not the biggest difference here. We're going to assume we're getting stuff done within a small range of pricing. But what matters above that is speed to closing out a work order. When a tenant doesn't have hot water, they want that fixed now, right? And it's much easier to fix that now when you're dispatching your own in-house maintenance techs. And that's going to increase the likelihood that that's a happy resident and that they renew their lease, which is ultimately what we care about. That's the big dollar stuff, everything associated with leasing and revenue. So in-house maintenance typically means, assuming that they have the right amount of maintenance techs per units that they have under management, makes it easier to solve those problems a little bit more quickly. And it's just, again, you're minimizing variables when you have people in-house. So if that management company has to go contract out with Joe the handyman and they're not, hey, we got a job for the next couple of days, I'll get out to that water heater on Thursday and it's a Monday, that's really problematic, right? You want to be able to work through these problems quickly as an operator, right? And by you, I mean your contracted management company. So it's much better to have folks in-house. Fourth thing that I really, really care about is that the management company has extremely robust and thorough accounting and reporting. This is something that is not oftentimes discussed when people are talking about vetting management companies or working with management companies. They are basically your accountant as well in a lot of ways, right? They're classifying transactions, they're reporting income and expenses, they're reporting capital expenses. And you need to confirm that their chart of accounts and that they're reporting aligns with both your underwriting, aligns with what your CPA wants, aligns with what you personally expect just as a client. And you want to make sure that it's very granular and very detailed and very thorough. So long story short, you should be asking for a copy of a sample owner report or an owner report with information redacted, right? So that they're not sharing any confidential information like property address, ownership, et cetera, so that you can get a sense of what their accounting actually looks like, because it's extremely important to get that right. And again, not a lot of folks talk about this, but like you're only as good as the financial data that you're receiving as a multifamily investor from an operation standpoint. You want to make sure that data is extremely robust. So, and then that comes back as well to property management software that's being used as well. That goes without being said. Obviously you want to work with a PM that has great software, but typically what comes with great software, or what comes with different software, is the ability to be or the ability to report financial data at different levels. The big players like the Appfolios, the rent managers, the Yardies, they're going to be able to report that information much more thoroughly than a lot of kind of the smaller time management software platforms. So you want to get a sense of that before you actually work with a management company. The last thing that I want to mention is You want to make sure that you understand your property management company's leasing process, and you want to make sure that it is a great and well-oiled leasing process. We care about revenue above all else in multifamily real estate and in income producing real estate as an asset class. Again, I talk about this ad nauseum. The vast majority of your expenses are fixed, so your revenue really dictates your actual net profitability from an NOI standpoint. You got to minimize your vacancy. You got to maximize your rent roll. So you want to develop a really deep understanding of how your management company approaches the leasing process. And there's all kinds of questions you can ask that fall under that umbrella, such as, how do you train your leasing agents? Are they good? How many do you have? What is the showing process? What do you typically do? You take professional photos? How quickly do you get stuff up? There's all kinds of questions you can ask there, but you really want to feel comfortable with that management company's leasing process before you actually sign a management agreement. And this is a great opportunity to go and secret shop some of their other ads, right? To go out there and actually go on a Zillow or a apartments.com and actually take a look at some of their for rent ads and to put yourself in the tenant's shoes. But that's the most important process of the multifamily investing or multifamily operations and asset management process is the leasing process. So you really want to make sure you have a sense of how good they are at that. So I hope this was helpful for everybody out there who is thinking about hiring a management company or is going to go out there and evaluate a management company. Again, to recap the 5. Number 1, experience managing similar assets to the ones that you are buying or currently own. Number 2, specialized staff, and that typically comes with scale, people who are operating in siloed roles. Number 3, in-house maintenance. Number 4, robust and thorough accounting. And number 5, a well-developed leasing process. If you found this episode helpful, please leave the podcast a rating and review. If you think somebody in your network would find value in listening to this episode, please consider quickly sharing it to them over text, email, or on social. And again, thank you all for listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.